Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, it has happened. Everyone knows that, right? Putin invaded Ukraine. All the debate is over. It's been happening for weeks now, and he invaded. And not only did he invade Ukraine, he invaded Ukraine in probably the most elaborate and grand way that we have seen any military action, at least in Europe and maybe in the rest of the planet, since probably Hitler took on Europe. The amount of force and the tactics that are being used are quite grand. It is a full-on invasion. None of this, he was talking about peacekeepers and just taking the East and all this kind of stuff. It is a full-on scale war. And this is something it's happening moment by moment. The stuff that's transpiring over there is appears to be pretty horrific. I was up till probably 2 a.m. this morning over on our TPH network, which is our social media type of website, and I was trying to give updates moment by moment as I could from the various news sources that I look at, and it sounded quite horrific and dramatic, and for a lot of people over there in Ukraine, it certainly is. But most certainly, Putin he's caught the world off guard, and that's exactly it. He caught America, Europe, NATO with their pants down. I know that there's been warnings of this, but I don't think that anyone quite realized how aggressive his plan was to move in on Ukraine, and it certainly is that. There's a lot going on, so it's crazy with so much going on. You'd think I'd have a lot to talk about. The problem is there's so much going on, it makes it difficult to figure out what to talk about. So I may break this up over a few different videos and then, report back as things change. I want to make it clear, I am in no way a Putin supporter, and I'm not really a supporter of what the West is doing. I see that both have a lot of wrong going on in this situation, but it's definitely something for us to take notice of, because I have a feeling that if we don't, and when I say we, I don't just mean the United States, but the West, NATO, but predominantly the United States. If we don't address this, we could face him much later on as he's grown more powerful, kind of like what Hitler did. I mean, he's really following that playbook, where he's taken the smaller countries, he's taken the ones that the rest of the world thinks it's really bad, but they're not really willing to get involved over. And at some point, I believe this because I think he made it pretty clear in one of his speeches this week, that their intention is to retake all of what was once, imperialistic Russia, which would include most of Eastern Europe, including Poland. So if that is his long-term goal, and it does appear, at least in some way, that it is, especially based on the amount of all-out aggression that's been done over the last 24 hours, then that definitely puts us in a position that at some point, Europe, and then, of course, the United States, is going to get involved. So I guess the question is do it now or do it later once he's a little bit bigger and more powerful? Apparently, the president is supposed to speak this afternoon. It was crickets from him for a while. A statement was released last night that, of course, he didn't condone this, and that he'd be praying for the Ukrainian people, and that he would be making some kind of statement later on today, this afternoon. So we'll wait and see what he has to say. My guess is that he's going to, condemn this and going to issue a bunch of sanctions, maybe even pretty harsh ones, and but in the end say that it's unfortunate that basically this isn't a NATO country, so there's not really much else we can do. The only thing that I wonder what's going on, because there's a whole lot more going on with Ukraine, because a lot of people are like, why Ukraine? Like, what is it about Ukraine? Why do we care about Ukraine? Well, let me try to fill that in as much as I can, as much as I have the knowledge of. You know how the mafia, they usually have at least one business that seems to be pretty legitimate. Maybe it's a trash company or laundry business or sporting goods supply or something like that. And that's the business that they use to funnel all their dirty money through. Well, for the West, especially the United States, that's what the country of Ukraine basically is. That's why we've seen all these reports over the last few years of the president's son and other Democratic and even Republican leaders having children working in Ukraine, doing a job that they have zero experience doing, but yet making millions and millions of dollars. If some of you don't know, there's a video a few years back of Biden at the Council on Foreign Relations laughing and joking about how basically they blackmailed or threatened Ukraine by offering them $1 billion loan as long as they, got rid of a particular prosecutor and then put in place someone that they approved of. So there's a lot of the stuff that Putin has said in his speeches in the last few days, he's actually very correct on. And so because of all that, I've got to wonder how much America, Biden in particular, and the West is willing to allow Putin to come in and take over Ukraine and very possibly discover some of the dirty work that's been going on in Ukraine, because that's what it appears that Ukraine has been used for. And so that may be a bigger deciding factor on whether how much action we get involved in than really anything else. But in the end, I suspect, for at least for now, we may not do anything, at least officially. There's still always the strong possibility that an accident causes this to expand further. A missile going out of the way and missing its target and hitting a NATO target, or some other type of false flag that makes it look like, we've got to go in and defend, what's ours because Russia's taken this too far. That's always a possibility. And in the end, if we don't do anything, like I said, I think we're eventually going to have to face this. I believe that this is all very biblical. And I believe it's all part of this whole plan. It's funny. I saw someone online last night saying, amazing. In just a few hours, Putin ended the health crisis. I mean, it's gone now, basically. No one's even talking about it. No one cares. So it's amazing how this is fixing a lot of political problems for several countries. Taiwan and China is certainly heating up as a problem. China has made several comments over the last few hours, indicating that you're next, Taiwan. They said that Taiwan is not like Ukraine. Taiwan has always been part of China, and that they always will be. And then there was reports that they were saying that, pay attention, basically, and I'm translating it in my own words, but basically pay attention to what's going on in Ukraine, because that's what's going to happen in Taiwan. In fact, reports are in China on their TV this morning that they were airing a program that basically talked about the fate of Ukraine is the fate of Taiwan. There's been reports of 9 or more planes, military attack planes from China invading Taiwanese space. There's also been some unsubstantiated reports, and I've seen a lot of it, but I haven't seen anything hardcore, so this may not be correct. But I have seen quite a few reports of very possible naval incursions into Taiwanese areas. So it does look like that's moving, and I suspect... my guess, and I could be wrong, my guess is that they're probably going to wait and see what the West's response is, which is basically what Biden's response. Because whatever the United States responds to this will be the rest of the West. They're leading us. I mean, NATO, they can say all they want, but they certainly don't have the military might to take on Russia without the United States. I mean, we're the one that supplies all the troops and the equipment for the most part. So wherever the United States stands on this, that's where NATO will stand. And probably China's waiting to see that. And if they feel that it's a pretty weak response, I wouldn't be so surprised that if over the next day or two, we might be having this same kind of conversation, but in regards to Taiwan. Now, let's get to the actual tactics and stuff that is going on. I said earlier that we're seeing a scale of war happen in a way that we really haven't seen since World War II. And that is true. We're seeing them use amphibious assault, airborne troops, of course, aerial bombing, naval ships. I mean, there's attacks everywhere. They are attacking just about every portion of the country. Now, from the best that I can determine, so please understand that I'm not there, and I'm only going on what I'm able to determine. When you see maps that may show the fighting, and I've shared some already on a Ukrainian map of where all the fighting is, what it looks to be is that the majority of those places are just strategic strikes that Russia has done, at least so far. But you have to understand things are changing moment by moment. But it looks like the majority of those sites are strategic sites where Russia has taken out maybe a radar station or a communications tower or a fueling station for planes or tanks or something like that. From the best that I can tell, there's pretty much only just a few places that there's some very heated battles going on between Ukrainian and Russian forces. And the rest, it's just growing. So when you hear the reports and you see the map, it makes it look like that there's major battles going on all over the country. And I don't believe that's correct, because some of the information is saying that only a small portion of those 150 to 200,000 Russian troops that were staged are even like being used at this point. They're not even using the full force of the Russian military at this point. So it looks to be like most of these attacks are either strategic missiles and rockets or bombs from planes or even helicopters. As far as actual troops on the ground, there are a few places, but it may not be quite as widespread as it appears. And we are getting reports, I'm seeing reports that the Ukrainian forces are fighting back. At first, it did not look that way, but you have to understand, I was seeing this a few days leading up to this, that a lot of news outlets were pledging to not discuss Ukrainian troop movements and anything so that it wouldn't give away their location. So when you see the vast majority of news reports only talking about Russia and not Ukraine, it could be for that reason. There has been reports of Russian planes and attack helicopters taken out. And I saw a report earlier that as of yet, Russia has sustained quite a bit of damage in this attack, but they are still moving forward, and that Ukraine is fighting back. The president of Ukraine has issued a proclamation that any Ukrainian citizen can go wherever the government agencies might be and obtain weapons and fight back. And they're encouraging everyone to fight back. There's lots of video, and I'm not going to show you because you can imagine this being an actual war. Some of these are traumatic and horrific, and that's what war is. But it is very much a Red Dawn scenario, and I suspect that the next video I do today will focus on that, focus on this whole situation from a preparedness standpoint of how we need to be prepared even more. But most assuredly, we do need to be prepared. Not so much because I think Russia's going to attack us, but we are learning a lesson of what this is going to look like. We're also learning a lesson of what this is doing to the economy. The Russian economy, at least on the surface, their stock market took a huge hit as soon as this started happening last night. The ruble started dropping, but they put a clamp on that. They shut the stock market down. They shut all trading down in Russia, apparently until this is over. But it's not going too good on our side. Basically, every market on the planet was in a tailspin for the first few hours of this. And the United States market is the same. It pretty much dropped off a ledge as soon as the announcement started coming that this was happening. Now, it's regained a little bit, and it looks slightly more stable, but still considerably down. The market is at least down in the neighborhood of 2 to 2.5%. Bitcoin is not doing very good at all. It lost initially around over $4,000 in value. It's come up slightly. Oil is the big one. Oil keeps going up. Oil broke the $100 a barrel mark overnight, but it has come back down a little bit. But it's showing that it wants to be that. JP Morgan predicts that in the coming days or weeks of this conflict, that we could easily see oil hit $120 to $125 a barrel. And if that happens, you can expect to probably be paying somewhere between $7 and $8 a gallon at the pump, maybe even more. So this is going to hurt us, and that's what Biden said yesterday, and that's what the ambassador of Russia said, that Americans are going to feel the pain of this. Between Russia and Ukraine, they take up 1/3 of the world's wheat exports. They're major players. Russia is the number 1 wheat exporter on the planet, and Ukraine, I think, is number 4 or number 5. Russia is a major oil producer and major on a lot of things. And so this is going to cause havoc, and it already is, even if we don't directly get involved in this war. It is going to affect us. And this is why I've been telling, yesterday, I didn't really think it was going to happen this fast. And that's the thing. That's what we're seeing with the tactics that Russia is using. We're seeing their military tactics on a level we've not seen them before. We've not really seen Russia move this way as a full military force since World War II. I understand that they've been involved in some things. They went into Georgia. They went into Crimea. But this is different. This is a full-scale war that is going on. And we're seeing that Russia is actually a pretty formidable enemy right now. And that's the thing. At what point does someone put their foot down and say it's enough? How many different countries are they going to take before they stop it? And I think that's the big question right now going on, probably in NATO and in the White House. At what point do we put our foot down, or do we try to create a scenario that allows us the excuse to get involved in this? And that's very possible. Continue to be on guard of cyber attacks. Depending on the United States and NATO's response, we'll probably have a lot to depend on the amount of cyber attacks that could happen against us. If we start getting more involved in helping the Ukrainians, even if we're not involved in the fighting, that could happen also. Putin pledged last night that any country that get involved, that tries to stop them, that gets in their way, will suffer very swift and severe punishment from Russia. So we are certainly not out of the woods. Is this the apocalypse? Is this World War III? Not yet, folks. Not yet. Could it eventually become that? It absolutely could. It absolutely could. It may not, but it could. And I think most people, even the people that believe that Russia would do this, are still caught off guard on the speed and the overwhelming force that he's used. I think most of Americans just weren't prepared for this. And we'll talk about that because it looked like that most of the Ukrainians were not prepared for this either. And so we'll talk about that in the next video. But folks, pray for the Ukrainian people. Regardless of which side and regardless of who's wrong and who's right, and there really isn't anyone that's wrong or that's right in this situation, there are some innocent people over there in Ukraine, and they're suffering. And I'm sure very good people. And there's a lot of good Christian people in Ukraine. So certainly keep them in your prayers. I will try to keep updates going. I've been really focusing, we're having a serious kind of ice storm and sleet storm. So I told my wife there's not a whole lot work I can do. I'm just going to focus on this today to try to help you folks keep updated as much as possible. I will be over on our website, tphnetwork.com. You can go ahead and join, sign up. Works a lot like Facebook. And I'll be making updates as often as I can there. And I'll probably be back on here later with another video or two. So folks, keep them in your prayer. I would get out and I would certainly stock up on fuel, and maybe even buy a little silver and gold, because it's going up, and it probably will for a while. But that's just my opinion. But I would definitely get out there and stock up. All right, thank you all for watching. Stay safe. Keep those Ukrainians in your prayers, and I'll catch you in the next video.